Good day there, everyone. And as you can see, we're going to be looking at the Object 252 today, and the Defender, since they're the same vehicle. And I realised on Twitter I'd put out a poll, and the AMX M449 here seemed to be the likened take for the next video. But since we do have the 252 still in, if I would be on the correct tab at the moment, it is still in the premium store, and for another good 13 days, so nearly 2 weeks. And I realise that some people are probably thinking, well, what's the difference between these two? Well, statistically, I can assure you, well, there's no difference, so you don't have to fret over that at all. But the only difference that there is, coming back in here and looking at the exterior tab, you get this special camo applied. That is going to be your camo for all 3 seasons, because as you can see, we cannot apply anything else. Now, if you would happen to get the standard 252, you would have to put on, for gold or credit, your own camo, which, being the same price, I think the Defender's the better bet here, as long as you care for how it looks aesthetically and all this spare bit of kit on it, which I think gives it a nice bit of character. Now, one thing I will be attempting to accomplish in this video, since I know it seems to be a bit of a point of contention, is the 252 is seen as a bit of OP by some. Now, I am a firm believer that the Object 252 here is a side-grade vehicle to the IS-3, and for a good number of reasons, of which I will go into great detail on this in Tanks GG, all the while comparing it most likely to the i6 as well, since this in all reality is going to be what a lot of people weigh the purchase against, being one of the other mainstay Russian premium tier 8 vehicles. Now, as I always do at the beginning of these pieces, we're going to look at the crew. Now, I am running an exceptional crew on this. Admittedly, I typically don't like doing this just so I can show off a crew that'll be more akin to what most people will be using. This is 4+ crew skills, but I detest poor gun handling, brother, and the 252 is definitely that. But to put things into context, I don't like the i6 for the same reasons, so it's not that the 252 is any worse, it's just for my playstyle. I've got a very good crew on it, and I'm running foot as well, in addition to running vents. Now, if you're not running foot and you want to get the aim time down a bit more and let the gun handling slide just a touch, you may consider running a gun lane drive instead, but you're always going to want to have a large caliber gun rammer on it and a vert stab, because if you run a vert stab, you probably want to have it on there. Now, I did have time to run the 252 in about 10 battles, 3 of which were bottom tier. I was in a tier 10 match, which is exactly what I want to show off to all of you, because this is how you're going to want to know how the 252 performs. And I think it better reflects on this thing's stats and how it is not OP when it is bottom tier. But it is still more than usable, just like the IS-3s you would expect at a tier 10. Now, I'm going to show you one of those 3 matches. Now, if I would have showed you all 3, this video would probably be a good 40-50 minutes long, and I don't think anyone wants to slog through that. And to be quite honest, I don't think I've got the wind in me for it. Now, we're going to get right into that battle, and afterwards transition into the after battle report and Tanks GG. So without further ado, let's get right into that match. Now, we've got our 252 on El Halafel, and it is very much a tier 10 match. As you can see, fair number of tier 10 mediums, Yoke Pads 100, so we're far from the top of the food chain. Now, since they do have a plethora of mediums, that means we're not heading over to A1. We have neither the speed for it, and they've got exceedingly quick mediums, so that probably will not end decently for us. And I'm not doing scratch sketch on this one, by the way, just because last video we did the low. It's essentially the same as what I'd stated there. But just bear in mind, you know, I'm zooming in the map. Like I said, not going over to A1, but instead we're going to cut across the back and side, go up to 3 and dump in right over here at B3. And that's what we're going to focus on, being a bottom tier heavy tank. Now typically you would only want to go there if you've got a modicum of gun depression, but there is something I want to show all of you, that you can get the gun down fairly easily as well. It's a bit tricky to do, but just to say it's a good showing for what you can do for this vehicle on this map. And apparently it's a bit balked on showing enemy HP and what the vehicle is. All T works though. That's alright. It won't change what we're doing here. It's been a bit wonky lately. But anyway, we're going to come up here. I have a poke at the C50. I'm still amazed how this even connects, because apparently that just cracked him with the side of the command edge. That's not going to happen every time, don't get me wrong. There was RNG flipping them the proverbial bird. Now what we are going to do is going to come up here. Now I'm going to show you. We're going to come up here, pop the E50M on the side of the tires. Now look at this. I'm going to pause it. You see what I've done here. You've got this lip. We're going to work the tank up at an angle and get the left and side track up here in order to get the gun down into what's in front of us. Now this could be problematic if you've got numerous things aiming at you, because, well, they could hit your lower plate or they could track you and you'll be stuck. So this isn't something you're going to want to sit here and just stay. You're going to want to vibe back and forth and just keep an eye on them in third person and make certain they're not aimed at you. And since we know that the E50Ms keep focusing on other things, pop the E75 quick, come back, and rinse, lather, repeat. Now one of the big things is, and I'm going to pause it here very briefly just to explain things, they have commanded the 1-2 line thoroughly. Now we have a TD and an E50M behind us. From this position over at D67, they can shoot well up on the crest of this lip. And because of this, we need to be a constant force up top, closer where I am, and preferably the STI if he would be up a bit quicker, getting to a position and keeping them back before they can get up on the lip. Because if they can come back and shoot into us, that is a huge issue. But that said, we're still going to be aggressive, having a presence here, but not being overly aggressive. Now, look at that. I did load APCR. This thing's got a 265 pin APCR round. It will go clean through most turrets. Well, outside of the exception of some heavies, but a fair number of 210s. Now, you can see I'm being rather adept at keeping the back chip between me and the C50M. He will go straight through our lower plate, so we don't want to give him any of that. But we're still, like I said, going to stick round up here, keeping them back, so the guys out on the A line could start getting the work in. But at the same time, pausing it quick again, zooming out a bit. If you're coming from the eastern side, you do not want to be over here. You see how we're on the left-hand side hugging this ridge. They've got an artillery, which is precisely why we're not going to give him many easy shots on us, and that's also the reason I keep, you know, jostling back and forth. It's a habit of clan wars and everything else. Just makes it a bit harder for an addy to directly hit you. Now, watch, we're going to whiff a shot, but afterwards we're just going to pop and go straight through yet another E50M's turret, because as I had stated, 265 pin APCR rounds do wonders in bottom tier in a tier 10 match. And this poor E50M, though, I think he's been having to guard me this entire match. I think it's more of RNG on his end, and it's pretty much kept me alive at full HP, so it's not that they were doing anything hourly wrong here. And coincidentally, as you saw from the first shot, we've had pretty stupid accuracy. Now, E50M's gone, we're going to poke up, get this 97 out of here, but we've got a 30, so we're not going to go all the way around and let them track us. So we're going to come up, shoot the AMX 30, but we're not going to push around the corner for that aforementioned reason of artillery, because if we don't wait to delight, we come up and over this edge, and he's probably going to have a go at us, and we want none of that. So, waiting that 6-8 seconds, coming round, getting to the lower side, and if you will remember from the last video I did with the low, typically you don't want to come up here. If there's a lot of TTs, people will sit back pretty much where the batchet is, just off to the left or over at F1, they will nail you. Which is exactly why I get lit and I start cutting off to the lower side. Popping a shot at this AMX 30 quick, but tracks them. This vehicle only has 0.42 accuracy. It shouldn't be sniping this thing. I mean, it's a brawler as it is, so having that poor accuracy isn't all that bad. But it is worse than the RS3, which we'll take a look at in Takes GG. Now, this is pretty much just mopping up at this point. We're a bit too slow to get in, get any damage off, but I want to add, again, the fact that even with low gun depression, even at bottom tier, the 252 can get work in very easily as a bottom tier in its tier 10 match. Now the other battles I played, which as I mentioned will be in the description below, he's a bit more aggressive in some instances. Notably the one on Monastery, or rather, sorry, Gamefile calls it Monastery, it's Abbey. Up against a Panzerkampfwagen 7 and a pair of defenders, respectively. And that's probably another one you want to have a look at, not least of which just a reminder where to shoot Panzerkampfwagen 7s. And yeah, that's really about it for this. Now, let's transition over on into Takes GG. You'll get a more genuine sense based on the HAD stats of why this 252 here isn't really a better IS-3, only in a single sense is it. So, since the last person died, let's go ahead right over and have a look at the after battle, and then Takes GG in turn. Okay. So we've got the after battle, we made just a bit under 130,000, and for 3,500 damage, I would say that puts it right on par with just about any other tier 8 premium, so that's a leg up. Now, you need to look at this and the fact that we were bottom tier. We did spend 35k on ammunition. We did spend, or I should say I spent, since I'm a bit of a numpty around foot, another 20k on that, and we still came out with a premium account with a 70,000 net earning, which that's something I look back and the IS-6, for instance, to where even at top tier, you're facing off against 8s. There's a lot of tier 8s you have to use APCR with if they're played intelligently, and so you find an IS-3, you're not going to be putting that with 175 pin. So from my experience, IS-6, that ammunition cost is even more of an expenditure than it is on the 262, because if you're top tier or if you're in a tier 9, you really don't need to be using APCR. So I find the 252 is even a better creditor than the IS-6. Now, the mainstay of this, what we need to look at, is over on Takes GG, so let's swap right on over to that and see exactly why I think the Defender is a good fit for where it is statistically as far as damage and armor goes. So, here we're looking at the 252 as compared to the IS-3A, the IS-6 and the Intectri IS-3. Now, immediately you will notice the DPM on these 1835 to 1834 on the IS-3. They are nearly identical. So that is a similarity amongst many you will see as we continue down looking at the stats. Now, it is worse DPM than the IS-3A, but I still feel the 252 in nearly every brigade is a better IS-3A, which is another thing you'll soon see when we look at gun handling. IS-6, better DPM, but much lower penetration. Now, this is due to the fact that it's got Pref MM, and that is something I'll get into further at the tail end of this Takes GG section. But looking once again, same penetration as the IS-3. This is very much a side grade 2-cent IS-3. Now, the alpha damage is higher, and that is awesome. It is exceptionally good when you're bottom tier in higher alpha matches that are usually tier 10 battles. But you also have this nearly second and a half longer reload time than an IS-3. This will penalize you quite a bit if you flummox a shot or you just outright don't pen. It can be a problem. So you've got better alpha but worse reload. Side grade. Now, the caliber of gun's the same, 122, it's good for overmatch mechanics. If it's 40mm armor, you'll overmatch it, or less, so it's always a leg up. 1000 on the shell velocity, which once again, very, very similar to the IS-3. Right on par with it. And then you got the IS-6, which is well below. It's part of the reason why, admittedly, I use a fair bit of APCR on the IS-6, not just because lackluster pen, but because the shell velocity is pretty bad, especially if you're having to shoot anything in over 200 meters or so. It can be a bit problematic. And IS-3A is much higher. It's, 1400 because it's got APCR as a stock ammo, but it has a heat round for the premium, which is part of the reason I don't like the IS-3A. Amongst the worst gun handling, as I had mentioned, 252 better than the IS-3 in every single way when it comes to gun handling. Better in accuracy, better aim time, and dispersion is 10% better. But on that note, it is also 12% worse than the IS-3. And especially when you look at the turret traverse, it's 50% worse than the IS-3. But the thing is, you have a 10% better aim time at 3.07 compared to the IS-3's 3.26. So that nearly mitigates the issue of having worse gun handling than the IS-3, because your aim time is better. Which is one of the reasons why you saw at the very beginning of the video I'm running Food and Vents to stress the gun handling, because the aim time isn't exactly all that bad on the 252. Now, on the mobility, we go 35 as compared to the IS-3's 38. We have a little bit worse power to weight ratio at just under 14 compared to the IS-3, which is a little bit above 14 horsepower per ton. But it has the exact same mobility as the IS-6. So if you've played an IS-6, you can expect the same exact mobility on a 252, but you've got the added bonus of a slightly better hull traverse than the IS-6, which is the exact same as the IS-3 at 31.29 degrees per second. Now, you do have a little bit worse terrain resistance, but if you look down here, it ends up still being well better than the IS-3A and the IS-6, and just ever so slightly different than the IS-3. So overall, slightly slower in a straight run than the IS-3, slightly slower uphill, but nearly negligible, but the exact same mobility as the IS-6. Which I think is excellent. Now, the armor is where we start seeing discrepancies. You've got 130mm on the front. Now, that's only 20mm more than the IS-3, but as you're about to see, that makes a huge difference when you compound that onto the fact that it's got better angling, at least from a direct on from the front. Now, this is misleading. You've got 100mm armor on the side, and this is one of the many reasons why I think the 252 will not replace an IS-3 outright, especially in massed play, in clan wars, any structured play. Because, actually, let's go ahead and have a look at it now. The armor on the front, going over, actually we'll stick on the visual model, from the front slightly above you can already tell 260 outwards of 300 on the upper plate. That is going to keep you protected against any standard round, unless it's a high roll, even from a tier 10 heavy tank. Now your lower plate is, 250 downwards to 260. That's excellent, but there's a big issue here, and if you've played the i7, which this should look familiar to you, this is nearly the exact same layout as an i7. As soon as you angle this even slightly, look at this, it's down to 200 to 210 mil thick. If someone's smart, they will just recognize this and penalize you for it. You must keep the hull straight on. But at the same time, if we go over and look at the IS-3, even where you've got the tracks adding extra armor, it's only 200 mils thick, and that's dead on. And then outside of that, it's 175 to 180. If you've got a 200 to 220 pen gun, you can look at the front of an IS-3 and just go, oh, I'll pen him, no problem. Which is why a lot of people believe that the 252 is OP when compared to the IS-3, because we saw the DPM's the same, but you've got about the same mobility with much better armor, but that is only true from the front. Now, if we look at the sides, we're going to switch over to the collision model, so you get a better sense of where everything's laid out. You only have the smallest strip of spaced armor on the side, and it only brings you up to 130 mil thick. The entire of the upper side is only 150. Now, if you look down here, even at the tracks, it's still only 120 mil thick. That is paltry protection compared to the IS-3, which at range, it's going to save you compared to the 252. This is incredibly thick. Now, from the upper side down to just above the tracks, it's 220 upwards to 230, and your tracks still cover about the same as the 252. Now, at range, this will give you a lot of saving chance, because if you don't hit this, it'll be the lower sides, and if you're using heat, it's probably not going to go through, or you're going to hit the side of the turret, which is still, it has a bit of armor on it. The 252, it simply doesn't have this on the sides. Now, it does have a stronger side turret, but typically if you're shooting one of these things, it will be into the side on the hull, and you're probably going to take out the ammo rack of one of the crew members. Now, another thing which is a monumental issue, which is something that back in WGLNA, if you'd watched it or played in it, from my personal experience, I learned this really quickly. You could reverse side scrape in an IS-3. 252, you can't do that. You're just going to shoot it in the cheek right here, because it's the same thing as an IS-7. That's why you don't see reverse side scraping IS-7s. The IS-3, it's nearly impenetrable if you do this, because you're going to come back here and you're going to side scrape it about this angle. This all will be protected by a wall, and then someone's going to be shooting up into this. It's either going to be outright ricocheting, absorbed, or it's going to be incredibly hard to pen. And that is just another facet of the 252, which makes it a side grade in my eyes, because the armor isn't nearly as versatile. It is solely frontal armor. And we've got another problem here. Well, not necessarily a problem, but just put things in a better perspective. With the IS-3, if you know anything about this thing's turret, hold down, you have to resort to shooting this incredibly small hatch, which is a very, very small hitbox, or if you're face hugging it, you will shoot it right above the gun. This is 20 mil thick, you will overmatch it with AP-APCR, and he will have no hopes except to raise the gun, which makes it incredibly hard to shoot into it. And if it's a close range, your gun is going to have the shell go into their barrel and not go into the roof of the turret. The 252, you can put the gun up, but guess what? You're just going to pen these two command hatches, which are a bit more notable of a hitbox when compared to the IS-3's command hatch. And It's also the issue that it's only 150mm thick, and being a larger hitbox, and if you're face hugging, if someone's smart, they're just going to shoot you here. Now, at range, it's not so much an issue. If someone's aiming there, it's probably going to go out to the sides. But just to say that I believe that the IS-3 hold down is still got a leg up on the 252. The armor overall, and in certain instances, is better on the IS-3. 252, if you do get top tier and you've got 2, 6, 7, 8 shooting you, and you've got this thing dead on, and they're having to shoot, unangled your front plate, they're hosed. IS-3, you don't have that safety, but at the same time, as I said, into the sides, at range, you've got some sense of safety versus the 252. And God help the enemy team, if you're in a position where you can reverse side scrape into IS-3, you're in trouble. So just as I said, putting things into perspective, I do not think this is end-all be-all better than the IS-3. There's many times I felt that the IS-3, I'd rather be in it versus the 252. Now, continuing on, there's a few things we didn't look at. You've got the HP 1500 on the 252, same as the IS-3, and the view range is 350 as well. You do have a bit stronger ammo rack though, 220 hit points on the module itself, but taking all of these things into account, it is not better outright than an IS-3. Now, even coming from someone like myself that really, truly hates tanks with horrible gun handling, I will concede that the 252 is better. Now, comparing it to the IS-6, which is, I hate doing, but at the same time I feel needs to be done, because a lot of people will obviously make this comparison, because this is most likely going to be the Russian premium you have in your garage. The IS-6, for the terrain it gets, if you consider the fact that it has very good armor against to 6s, 7s, 9 penetrable against those, and to 8s it's more than functional. If you know how to angle, you're at a 35-40 degree, it's very good at side scraping, which is something the 252 cannot do. It will perform incredibly well as top tier. Now against tier 9s, its armor suffers. The 252, if we look at it this way, its armor is impenetrable nearly to a 2, 6, 7, some 8s, 9s it's serviceable, and 10s you start to have some problems. It's in that regard very much like the IS-6 due to the matchmaking being preferred on the IS-6. Now, if an IS-6 isn't fortunate enough to see a 252, you've only got 217 pen with the APCR round, and you're probably not going to go through the front of a 252, even if it's, driving at a significant angle to you. You need a high roll motor to pen it. So it can be perceived as OP in that regard, but taking into account how the IS-6 is balanced towards its matchmaking, and how due to this it performs similar to the 252 does when it's bottom tier, I think it's justified. Now, you still do have better DPM, and if the 252 is driving like a complete retard, you will probably win because of this. Now, one thing I will say on the IS-6, which is one of the reasons, aside from the poor gun handling, I don't like it, is that base pen nearly forces you into APCR. Now, this is why I will wholeheartedly concede the 252 is better. Just as far as a credit earner in a tank all round, it's got 225 base with a 265 premium, so you're not constantly going to have to be using premium rounds. Meanwhile, the IS-6, there's a lot of instances you're forced to, which is a bit unfortunate. But just going into the overall picture at the tail end of these pictures, 252. If you enjoy the IS-3, there is very little reason not to own this. It plays nearly the exact same as the IS-3. You have better frontal armor than the IS-3. You're a bit slower though, but it is a side grade IS-3. You will like it. It is a good credit earner, And if you've got an IS-6, if you don't mind having non-preferential, you don't mind seeing T10s, because you know full well you guys be able to do damage against T10s. You've got, like I said, 265 pen APCR round. You saw how well that did us, and it's a workable tank at bottom tier. Again, you've got very little reason not to get the 252. I mean, it's on sale, $50, sub 50. That's not all that bad. Though if you're someone like myself who utterly detests poor gun handling, you may want to consider holding off. For instance, I enjoy the T26E5 because it's got a very good turret, it's quicker than the 252, it's got much better gun handling than the 252. That's my vehicle of preference. If I'm going to be going out and making money, that's more towards my playstyle. But as I said before, even though I am a person that detests poor gun handling, I will wholeheartedly concede this is a good tank. It's worth the money, and it certainly has its place in a compilized threes, in Clad Wars and what have you. So that's it. I hope everyone here found this video entertaining, if not informative, and I hope it incited too much rage and not believing this thing's OP outright, because I don't. But you all do take care until I catch you in the next video. So, thanks for now.